Raz. 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 Proszę, działa. Możemy tego, żeby tego szumu nie było zaraz. Tu, 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 tu. 1, 2, 3. 1, raz. 1, 2, 3. Raz, 2, 3. Teraz się nagrywać będzie dobrze, prawda? Okej.
What? But how do I speak? Oops. Listen. Okay. Yeah. Good morning. Boker Tov, everybody. I'm testing the equipment here while we take photographs, but it's nice to see all of you this morning. Boker Tov. Okay? I'm going to leave this.
Good morning, everyone. We're just waiting for the police delegation to join us, and then we'll begin. police delegation will be here in about 7 to 8 minutes, and then we'll begin. are going upstairs. Thank you. I know. They're entering. Good morning, everyone. We're about to begin. If everybody can take their seats, please, we would like to begin. Good morning. My name is Revital Yachin-Krakowski, and I am the CEO of March of the Living Israel and the Deputy CEO of the International March of the Living. We stand here today in Auschwitz-Birkenau, the site that has become the ultimate symbol of systematic mass murder of Jews in gas chambers. In this place alone, more than 1.1 million Jews were murdered, among them 200,000 children. 81 years after the Holocaust, we are witnessing something deeply alarming. Since October 7th, antisemitism has surged and spreading everywhere. The scale and normalization of this hatred echoes the dark times we have seen before, and today, of all days, we know how it ended. This is not history repeating itself, but it is history warning us. That is why we chose to open the March of the Living here, addressing this issue this morning. We are joined today by Holocaust survivor Nate Leipziger, who will address us today, and we're very fortunate to have you with her, Nate. And we're at the presence of survivor of recent deadly anti-Semitic attacks who remind us that this hatred is very much alive. Today we send a clear message as we march against anti-Semitism. We march in the memory of the victims perished during the Holocaust, and we march in honor of the survivors. It is my honor to invite President of the International March of the Living, Phyllis Greenberg-Heidemann.
Good morning to each and every one of you. This is a very solemn day. It's a solemn day not just in the Jewish calendar. It's a solemn day for all humanity. So I greet you this morning with a heavy heart that still has room for hope. Some of that hope lies because very different than 81 years ago, when law enforcement was very complicit in the crimes created during the Holocaust. This year we are honored, we are overcome with gratitude to the 130 members of law enforcement from around the globe who, rather than turn us into authorities, rather than long for and assist in our persecution and in our death, they stand with us, to protect you, to protect me, to protect the future. And for that, we have an almost insurmountable gratitude. So amongst everyone who's here, 7,000 strong from around this very diverse world situation, we're blessed to have law enforcement who says, who feel, who believe, and who practice life. Like the Jewish people, they protect our lives, they are standing with us, and they are committed to never again. I myself have had the privilege to meet many of them in last year's march and during this year, building up to this year's march, and to Paul Goldenberg, to Ben Heyman, to Mark Genetempo, to each one of you who help us, who lead others, who teach others, who embrace others and encourage others to help us survive. We no longer feel alone, and we want to, on behalf of the 6 million of our ancestors who aren't privileged enough to stand here and speak to you and say thank you, I'm bringing the message, and it's one of the greatest blessings I will ever have, is to say thank you for maybe giving us some moments of sleep in the night, that there are people who are protecting us. So thank you to Darabah, and to everyone gathered here, thank you for joining us today. And I hope you each find great meaning in this march, which is a march of remembrance, but a march of hope, and even a march of defiance. We say, Hineni, we are here, and we have the blessing to walk out of here. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. I call upon Paul Goldenberg, Chairman of the International Police Delegation and Deputy Director of the Rutgers Miller Center.
I do have some written comments, but I'll start out by saying, as my mother sat playing mahjong at Hadassah amongst the other ladies. They were all talking about what their sons do. And all my mother knew is that I had a beard, an earring, and long hair. And she kind of whispered and said, I really am not sure what he does. So I was the young Jewish American that decided to take a very different path. I went into law enforcement. I became a police officer. It was supposed to be a means to an end. I wanted to go to law school, but I said, you know what? I really feel good about this. And this is a place where I don't see the prejudice that everyone sees on the outside because we all wore the same uniform. We all had each other's backs. So I am a proud American Jew, and I'm very much a proud member of the law enforcement community. These are my brothers and sisters. So no matter where they're from, thank you. So before I begin, I want to express sincere gratitude to Phyllis, sincere gratitude for your extraordinary leadership of the International March, and Richard, who's become a very dear friend over the years. We're all over the world together. I lost my speech in Dubai, literally, went up in the air. I also want to recognize and thank the distinguished leaders of the major police associations and unions who are present here with me today. Johann Kopelke, chairman of the German Police Union. It is so significant that he is here today, so significant. He not only is the chairman of the police union, he is also the new president of the European Federation of Police Unions. That means he represents, I can't tell you, hundreds of thousands of police. So amongst the room here are the leaders that oversee or represent in some way millions and millions of, millions of police officers around the world. That's extremely significant. I will name these folks, the European Federation, Michael Brown, the Executive Director in Small and Rural. Michael, please stand. Rob Kilfoyle, who is the President of the International Association of Campus Police. Director David Rausch, President of the International Associations of Chiefs of Police. By the way, that is the largest police organization in the United States, one of the largest literally in the world. Sheriff Justin Smith, Executive Director of the National Sheriff's Association. Representing the sheriffs across the country. Amy Bishop, Executive Board Member from the National Association of Professional Staff. Harold Wax, I don't see him here. Vice President of the Volunteer Law Enforcement Officers Association. And as someone that does come from New Jersey, very proud. She was literally just appointed by the governor as the new colonel, I have to say it, first female ever to head the entire New Jersey State Police. Colonel? Jean? And I'm looking to see, I want to make sure I didn't miss anyone. And Sven, of course, who's a senior ranking person. He has spent more time in Jewish communities around Europe. So, yeah. So I'll move through this quickly, but they're the important people in the room. The survivors are the important people in the room, and you're all important people in this room because you're here today. So, look, it's a profound honor for me to stand before you as the chair. As you heard, I represent the Rutgers University Miller Center on Policing. As you already heard as well, we're gathered nearly 130 leaders from every organization. So that is what makes this this moment extraordinary. Here's what's interesting. We wear uniforms. Leaders of different nations. We are from different cultures. We are different colors. We are different religions. We have different traditions. But together, as you heard me say, we are truly united. And what we're here for is to remember, to learn, and to reaffirm our shared responsibility to each and every one of you, and to each and every one of you who are going to be in this march today. And when we go back to our constituents, when we go back to our neighborhoods, our states and nations, we will carry that with us. But what makes this truly significant is not simply that we're here to commemorate history. It is that we have come to one of history's clearest warnings. The bells are ringing. The red light is off. So, this place reminds us what happens when democratic norms erode. How do you put the word police and democracy in the same sentence? We don't want to know what the world will look like if it's not in the same sentence, and we stand here today in a place nearly 80 years ago, where that actually happened. When institutions falter, when hatred is normalized, and when human dignity is stripped away, the Holocaust did not begin with mass murder. We all know that. It began with the dehumanization, the slow corrosion of truth. Think about where we are today. Where are people getting the truth? Conscience, the rule of law. The lesson carries profound meaning for those of us in policing. When societies begin to fracture, when democracy weakens, and when vulnerable communities begin to question their safety in their schools, their neighborhoods, their synagogues, their churches, their mosques, houses of worship everywhere, our responsibility does not diminish. It grows. A democracy begins to fail the moment it can no longer protect our most precious natural resource, and that's our children. Our most precious natural resource. And many of them around the world in westernized nations are once again afraid to enter their houses of worship, their synagogues. A democracy, well, we can't safeguard all the vulnerable. We hope we can. We can't guarantee that all people will live together and worship without fear, but you can rest assured we are going to be working very hard on that into 2026 and 2027. So when people begin to question whether they can raise their families in peace and democracy itself stands in jeopardy, I do want to make a pledge. We, the guardians of peace, the guardians of safety, are not separate from those that we serve. We come, as I said to you, from every culture, every background. We carry both the strength, but we also carry the struggles of the very communities that we serve. And I'm going to say something. It's a learning experience for us in policing. In recent years, we have witnessed how easily human beings are dehumanized. We in policing are now being judged by the uniform we wear. We're no longer being judged by who we are as human beings. I have seen police officers standing in lines at protests, some of which had tears in their eyes. They just can't figure it out. I've had them look at me and say, "Why do they hate me so much?" I said, "That's interesting. That's very interesting." The reality must not divide us from the public. It must deepen in policing, the understanding of what dehumanization does to individuals, to institutions, and to society itself. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why I believe this delegation is so important. Not better than anyone, not greater than anyone. It's important because a mishap occurred, and I call it a mishap. That mishap was the police were not there to protect our people. They were not there. So I'm going to cut this short, and I'm going to end by saying the following words. We hear you. I spent time with Yoni, where is he? Yesterday. I have no words. I have no words. We understand the urgency of the moment. I promise you we will do everything in our power to confront the moment, protect vulnerable, and defend, and I say this, defend the democratic values that make freedom possible. Because again, without those words, it's meaningless. So that's why we're here. Because never again is not a reflection of the past. It is a responsibility. And what we say in policing, we will do everything in our power that we will not allow it to happen on our watch. Not here, not anywhere, not ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for the partnership. And now it's my honor to invite Mr. Sylvan Adams, President of the World Jewish Congress, Israel.
representatives of law enforcement from your various communities around the world, I want to sincerely thank all of you for being here. Your presence indicates a strong desire to understand and confront the world's oldest hatred, antisemitism. As leaders of law enforcement, you are entrusted with protecting the basic conditions of a free society: personal safety, protection of public and private property, and general upholding of law and order. Standing here in Auschwitz, we can all learn what happens when we ignore the early warning signs of hatred and how it can erode and eventually break down the norms of democratic societies. I stand here as the son of two Romanian Jews. My father, Marcel Abramovich, later changed to Adams, was taken into slave labor during the war. He used to describe this experience in his own unique way, saying humorously, "They forgot to feed us." That was his way: no bitterness, no pity. My mother, Annie Cohen, was a child in hiding in Bucharest throughout the war. Growing up, I truly thought the world had learned that anti-Semitism is evil and unacceptable. I believed that the post-Holocaust slogan of "never again" truly meant never again. Well, I was wrong. On October 7th revealed the latent anti-Semitism that I didn't understand still existed, the world's most enduring prejudice. On October 8th, weeks before Israel had entered Gaza, in fact, while we were still counting our dead, there were already large protests against us in the streets of London, Toronto, Sydney, and New York. The protesters weren't just denouncing Israel. They were holding Nazi symbols and shouting anti-Semitic slurs such as "gas the Jews." They were obviously not protesting a war that had not even yet begun. Rather, they were celebrating, justifying, and sickly glorifying the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Let's remember, on October 7th, genocidal terrorists entered peaceful residential communities whose residents were hunted, tortured, burned, raped, decapitated, and savagely murdered in the most cruel and barbaric manner. The terrorists also took 253 of our citizens, men, women, children, babies, the elderly, including Holocaust survivors, hostage in Gaza, where they were hidden by locals. On October 8th, I finally understood. Anti-Semitism had not remained on the fringes. It was being brazenly paraded in our downtown streets. So how did we get here? To fix a problem, you first need to define it. There are at least three intersecting nefarious forces that are conspiring against us in the West. And you need to know that they are led mostly by foreign actors who have infiltrated your countries and cities and are attempting, and unfortunately succeeding, to sow discord in the West. First, there is Iran, an Ayatollah regime that since 1979 has openly pursued genocidal aims against Jews while working to destabilize the West and export its Shiite theocratic rule worldwide. I'm not making this up. This is what they've told us. We should take them at their word when they declare jihad and threaten to destroy both the little Satan, Israel, and the great Satan, the United States. These declarations of intent, together with the means to do large-scale harm via their nuclear bomb development, ballistic missile programs, and proxy armies, threatens all of their enemies, beginning with the Jews. With the push of a button, Ayatollah Khamenei could have done what it took Hitler many years to accomplish. And this is precisely why the US and Israel attacked Iran a few weeks ago, after the Iranians refused to give up their tools to wreak enormous havoc. Next, there is the Muslim Brotherhood, funded and organized by the Emirate of Qatar, and by their leader, the Emir himself. For the last 30 years, beginning with the creation of their propaganda media arm of Al Jazeera, the Qataris have invested more than $1 trillion in their campaign to destabilize the West and create a worldwide Sunni Muslim caliphate. Their campaign against the Jews is just the appetizer dish. The main course is the entire West that they wish to convert and subjugate. To that end, the Brotherhood and their Qatari bankers are paying radical imams to preach hate and jihad to their congregations in the West. They've also made common cause with useful, idiot, radical leftists and anarchists as they've infiltrated Western university campuses and more recently, even high schools, spending hundreds of billions of dollars to influence what is taught and indoctrinate generations of students. Did you notice that the post-October 7th tent camps that sprouted out simultaneously across U.S. campuses all had the same tent brand and color? These had to be ordered and paid for. The Brotherhood, which has paid operatives in every Western city, organized the whole thing. While the Brotherhood operated for years at a relatively lower level, they amplified their activities after October 7th, perhaps believing, in the wake of Israel's catastrophic failure to protect its citizens on that tragic day, that this was their opportunity to once and for all destroy the Jewish people. It was like the Qataris flicked a switch to send their operatives into action. The aforementioned October 8th demonstrations represented the start of an unrelenting delegitimization campaign on campuses, via social media, and through threatened and actual violence in Western communities. The Qataris have been brazen in bribing politicians and opinion leaders, firstly on the left, but today also on the right, as podcasters such as Tucker Carlson barely hide as they sprout their conspiracy theories regarding the Jews' control over President Trump and America. The Qataris have also invested heavily in business and even in sporting events in order to normalize their behavior and preempt criticism. To set the record straight, Trump just a few days ago called Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owen, and Nick Fuentes disturbed low IQ, dishonest conspiracists. Finally, the third actor, and more recently, we have the Chinese. Through their ownership and manipulation of TikTok, the most virulently anti-Semitic of the social media platforms, as well as Chinese covert and overt support for the Qatari Brotherhood and Iranian jihadists, the Chinese complete this axis of evil. Now, while the Chinese have historically had no particular issue with Israel or the Jews, their participation in the axis of evil is due to their desire to destabilize the West. So to summarize, there are 3 foreign forces that have infiltrated all of your countries and cities: Iran and their proxies, Qatar via the Muslim Brotherhood, and China via TikTok. You need to look for their incitement activities in mosques, on university campuses, and on social media. If you in the UK, in France, in Germany, Holland, Australia, or in Canada think that this is a problem merely for Israel and the US, you are sorely mistaken. This evil is happening in all of your communities and knows no borders. Do you see a pattern here? Just as in Nazi Germany, it always starts with the Jews, but never stops with the Jews, as the Nazis turned their attention much more widely to global conquest. Likewise, both the jihadis and the Chinese are looking to destabilize the West and eventually conquer the entire planet. So these days we are seeing more and more people that hold anti-Semitic views. Across the democratic world, the pattern is unmistakable. Incidents are not just rising, they're accelerating. Just in the last year, we saw the Hanukkah attack at Bondi Beach, where a Jewish celebration was targeted with mass casualties, 15 dead, including children. The Yom Kippur attack in Manchester, where 2 Jews were murdered outside a synagogue. The DC attack, in which a terrorist murdered 2 Israeli embassy staffers, Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lishinsky. Survivors of those attacks are with us here today. Ava Wheatson. Hi, Ava. Please stand up. survivor of the Hanukkah massacre. Please stay standing, Eva, if it's okay. Thank you. Survivor of the Hanukkah massacre at Bondi Beach in Sydney, in which her husband, Tibor, and her close friend, Edith Brutman, were killed. Yoni Finley, who was injured in the Yom Kippur attack while in synagogue in Manchester. And Catherine Szkop and Abbie Talmoud, members of the professional staff at the Embassy of Israel in Washington and survivors of the DC shooting attack. Thank you. According to new figures from the Anti-Defamation League, the violent incident numbers against Jews are rising exponentially. The numbers speak for themselves. You can find all this information in the press release provided to you by our media team today. Unfortunately, this is not random. What drives it is not one ideology, but as I said earlier, a convergence. Islamic extremists as the ideological engine, the radical left providing language and legitimacy, the far right contributing its conspiracies and xenophobic traditions, and the Chinese with their superpower heft and diplomatic veto at the United Nations Security Council. They disagree on many things, but they align on this. Let me repeat this clearly. In the place where such horrors were witnessed, Jews are often the first target. We are almost never the last. When synagogues need constant protection, when schools become targets, when people are told to hide who they are in public, something much larger is going wrong. This is not a Jewish issue alone. It is a democratic issue. Your role in law enforcement is not only to respond after an attack, it is to recognize the pattern before it becomes one. To know when rhetoric becomes incitement, when protest becomes targeting, when networks move from messaging to planning. Then anti-Semitism becomes normalized. So-called protesters enter our residential communities in order to harass their Jewish residents. And too often, the response was not to remove the aggressors, but to ask the Jews to move aside. That is not neutrality. It's a failure of responsibility. So I say to you here, in the shadow of Auschwitz, your responsibility is not only operational, it is moral. Anti-Semitism is not the end goal, it is the instrument. Protecting Jewish life is not charity. It is an essential act of defending democratic society itself. And that's why you as law enforcement officers are here. And that's why never again must mean something real. I need to save a word for our local politicians who direct you, the law enforcement community, tackles hate. They should not be succumbing, or even worse, encouraging violence or threats to violence. When New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani repeats, globalize the Intifada, this is a statement of incitement against our communities. Politicians must also provide law enforcement with the tools to deal with this scourge and to protect law enforcement from scurrilous media and legal attacks. You've heard the analysis, you understand the patterns. But now I ask you to do something much simpler. Look around you. The Holocaust survivors are here. They're sitting beside us. Look them in the eyes. See what was taken from them when hatred was ignored, when it was rationalized, when it was allowed to grow. We stand here in Auschwitz, where the unthinkable became reality. And I say to you very clearly, if we allow anti-Semitism to rise again unchecked, if we allow intimidation to become normalized, if we allow violence to become thinkable, then we are not just dishonoring history, we are watching from the sideline as history repeats itself. The people sitting next to you are survivors of one Holocaust. If we fail, we risk creating the next generation of survivors. Because what began here did not begin with the gas chambers. It began with words, with permission, and with silence. Let's not allow a Holocaust to happen again. Not on our watch, not on your watch. Thank you again for joining us in this mission.
Thank you. Now is my honor to invite Yoni Finley, Hanna Abesidon, and Abbie Talmoud to join me in a conversation. Hanna is a survivor of the Bondi Beach massacre, the daughter of Eva. Last December, on the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, the holiday of miracles. Yoni, a survivor of the antisemitic attack in Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and Abbie, survivor of the antisemitic attack in Washington last May. Thank you for being here with us. Hanna, let's start with you. Tell us about your recollection of the dreadful day exactly 4 months ago in Bondi.
Yes, it is actually, today is the 14th, and it is actually 4 months. It started as a normal Sunday, Erev Hanukkah. I knew that Mom and Dad are going to the party at the beach. My daughter and I debated if to go, not to go. She was 9 months pregnant. She was due any minute, and she's got a 3-year-old. She said, "Mom, I don't want to go." And I said to her, "You know what? Let's just go say hello to Savta and Saba, and we'll pick up Renee and go home," because my granddaughter was there with her other grandfather. My son-in-law was supposed to join us, but at the end he decided he's staying home. We arrived there. It was, I don't know, maybe 5:45, something like that. Renee was asleep on her grandfather, so I went to sit next to Mom and Dad. And when she woke up, I went and got her a hot dog. I went to sit next to Mom and Dad, fed her there. And it was like already starting to get late for her, so I said to my daughter, I'll help you to the car, and I'll just head home and you take her home to sleep. And where Mom and Dad was sitting, we walked out, and instead of going to the bridge where it all started, and as I said before to Abbie, I'm not supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to sit here today. Renee decided that she wants to play with some games that were on the grass. And I kneeled down next to her and we played. And suddenly, I was with my back to the road, my face to the beach. And suddenly I hear these pops. And I look up to the sky. I thought it's fireworks, but it was strange because they didn't light the menorah yet, so why would there be fireworks? And my daughter, I must have froze. And I didn't realize what's happening, and my daughter just yelled out, "Mom, run!" And I picked her up, I picked Renee up, and we started running. Now, you have to understand, my daughter is 9 months pregnant, and she's running. And we're running towards the beach on the grass area. She tripped and she fell. And I couldn't see. I lost contact with Mom and Dad. They were literally like where you're sitting. And I lost contact with them. And while I'm running and I'm holding the baby and I'm trying to call Mom and Dad, and I'm like, Leo, they're not answering. She says, "Mom, no. They must have ducked down." Now, I didn't see anything. I just saw everybody running towards the beach, so I started running there as well. Eventually, we hid behind some cars. Shooting continued, and I actually heard them coming closer. One of the injured policemen was next to us, was hiding, which, again, I don't know why, but anyway. And he said, "I'm covering for you, run." And he showed to the left. So we continued running. and I got her to a safe place, and I went back to look for mom and dad. By the time I got back, I saw already bodies, and I came closer to the area where mom and dad were sitting, and I recognized dad's shoes and pants, but he was covered already, so I knew that he's gone. And I saw some people trying to do CPR on mom's friend, Edith, but she lost her life as well. And that's it, and that's when our Shoah started.
You speak, and we've seen the photos of people running towards the beach, and it all reminded us of the so many young Israelis running from the Nova massacre.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell us briefly about your dad, something that you want people to know about your dad?
He was a family man. He loved, adored his family. He loved us, our kids, me and my brother. He was so proud of his grandchildren. And he was waiting for this baby, like he went and bought a new suit, new shoes, like he told everybody, there's a bris, you have to come, I'm inviting you. And he didn't make it. And he didn't make it because he was a Jew. And that's what I kept on saying in every interview after that. Because he was a Jew, nothing else. My dad was a healthy person. Mom and dad was supposed to be on a cruise on the 22nd of March. And as Sylvan said, it starts with the Jews. It doesn't end with the Jews. I'm sorry, it doesn't. And who thought in Australia, in Sydney? We never thought about it. It wasn't something on the cards. I mean, it was on the cards. Sorry, I'm taking it back. It was on the cards after the 7th of October. Because I lived in Israel from 2015, and I came back to Australia in November 24, and I found a completely different Australia, not the Australia that I left. And you know what? I'm a bit upset with the Jewish community, and I understand that they are scared, but when I arrived, there were all the marches. Every Saturday there's a march, and and I'm thinking, where are we? Where are we?
Scared.
No, you're not supposed to be scared. You know what? I must tell you something, Rovital. I'm walking around with my symbols. I'm walking around with my Chai, and I'm walking around with my Magen David, and I'm not scared. And I must tell you something else. I work for a company. They have Indonesians, Chinese, Indians. They all say the same thing. We all feel scared because we are all minorities.
Thank you. I just want to recognize Eva here. She was to be on the march with Tibor last year, and she fell and it didn't happen. Eva, we're so fortunate to have you here with us, lighting this afternoon the torch to fight anti-Semitism. And this is a very symbolic date. Hanna, just say what happened 81 years ago.
Today, not today, tomorrow, 15th. Yeah, 15th of April, my grandmother was liberated in Bergen-Belsen. Yeah. So my mom's mom and my dad's mom, they both were Holocaust survivors. Yeah.
I don't think there's a more sadness connection than 81 years since liberation and 4 months to the Bondi massacre when Tibor was murdered just for being Jewish. Thank you so much for being here. Yoni, Yom Kippur.
Yeah, so I arrived in the synagogue in the shul that morning around 9 a.m. I was due to lead the morning prayers, the Shacharit service, so I made my way into shul. I did my usual fist bump with Bernard, our paid security guard, said hello to the other volunteers, went in through the gates, went into the foyer of the shul, said hello to the other people there welcoming people had come into shul that day for the service. That foyer was shortly to become a scene of absolute horror. So I go into the shul, I go to the bimah, to the platform in the middle of the shul itself. As I say, I'm leading the shacharit service and I'm getting myself ready. The rabbi comes over to say hello. We have a little bit of a joke because I was quite nervous about what I was meant to be doing and he wasn't ready for his laning. He said he wasn't prepared. He didn't know what sermons he was going to say. And it turned out that didn't matter because around 9:30 we heard a loud bang and we didn't know but soon found out it was a car that had driven into Bernard outside the shul protecting us and was trying to get into the grounds of the shul itself. So Alan, who's our chair of trustees, came running into the shul at that moment, shouting to get the doors. There were 2 doors on either side of the shul that were open, and this terrorist was making his way around the back of the shul trying to get in. One of the people that was killed on that day, Adrian, his seat was closest to the door on his side, and he leapt up and got that door closed, without a doubt, saving lives. There were 40 people inside shul that day. The door on his side was closed, the door on the other side was closed, and we made our way out into the foyer to see what was happening and to see if we could help. And as I came into the foyer and I came to the doors and I looked through the window, and the first thing I saw was Bernard in his bright yellow jacket lying on the floor. There's a car parked across the entranceway. I then look across the foyer and I can see Andrew, one of our very, very brave Community Security Trust volunteers. I've never seen so much blood. He was pouring with blood. And there were about 7 or 8 people holding the doors closed while a very large, very, very angry person was doing his level best to get in. And he had a knife, and he was using the knife to try and break through. He was picking up things from the grounds of the shul trying to break in, and he had what looked like a bomb around his waist. So we're holding onto the doors, and we knew the police had been called, and the police were there incredibly quickly. I don't know if this is true. I heard later that at Bondi it took 15 minutes for the police to respond. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was 15 minutes because when I left my daughter and I came out, it was maybe 10 minutes and they were already there. They just didn't know how to deal with the situation. Yeah.
So comparing that to the situation we were in, the police were there within 2 minutes. The attack started at 9:31 and by 9:38 he was dead. So they responded incredibly quickly. So as they got to the shul, they came into the grounds and they were shouting at him, armed police. And he ran down the steps of the shul quite aggressively towards them. And I presume because of what they thought was a bomb that would blow up my shul, my community, my friends, they opened fire. And he went down and somehow he got back up and they shot him again. And it was at that moment that I felt a bullet go into me. I always say I didn't collapse. I fell, and I have witnesses to back this up, I fell quite gracefully to the floor. And I'm lying there. My parents were in the shul that morning. And my father had been out in the foyer, and he'd gone back inside the shul, and somebody went in to get him. And I remember his face, and no child should ever see their parent like that. And he said afterwards that he's a doctor, but he's not trained for that. He didn't know what to do. He felt helpless. And I was being given sips of water, waiting for help. The fire brigade came in, the police came in, and then the paramedics got to me. And they moved me onto what I can only describe as a very large tarpaulin type material. And I was then taken out through the shul itself back through the doors that had been reopened at the back. Presumably they couldn't take me out through the front because of what they thought was still a bomb. And I got taken into an ambulance. And they were asking me, the paramedics, for next of kin details, and I was saying it's Yom Kippur. You won't be able to get hold of them, they don't have the phones, and if they did, they wouldn't pick them, or maybe they would have picked them up if they had the phones on them, but they don't carry their phones on Yom Kippur. So I go off to hospital, and this is, around 10 o'clock. My parents didn't know where I was until 2:45 that afternoon. And I got taken to the Manchester Royal Infirmary, and I had the most incredible care from the National Health Service, the NHS. They really, really were absolutely brilliant. I was taken into the emergency department. I'm terrified of operations. I was convincing myself all the way through that I'll be fine. A couple of days in bed, they'll release me, I can go home, I'll be fine. I'm struggling to breathe. I didn't know my left lung had collapsed. I got taken for a CT scan, and I go back into the emergency room and told, yes, you're going to need an operation. As I say, my lung had collapsed. There was damage to my kidney, diaphragm, to the bowel. So I signed the acceptance forms. I get taken through to theatre, and I'm operated on for 7 hours. I didn't know at the time that Adrian had been killed by the same bullet that didn't kill me, and that Melvin had been stabbed outside the shul grounds just because he was a Jewish person making his way to shul. And I was in hospital for 10 days. That's my story.
Abbie.
May 21st was a normal Wednesday. We started our day at work, as always. I worked with Sarah and Yaron and with Catherine, and we typically tend to these events together, better in numbers, and this was a young diplomats event, so it wasn't just Jews. There were diplomats from all over in the Washington area and from all different countries. I can very clearly picture different African countries and different Arab countries being represented there. It was a very diverse group, and we were mingling and enjoying, and I was the designated driver of the group, and we were exiting together as a group of 4. Catherine and myself walking next to each other, and Sarah and Yaron directly behind us. We started to walk towards the crosswalk, and immediately shots. I, growing up in Washington, assumed it's a drive-by shooting that's near us, because drive-by shootings happen in Washington, D.C., not in the neighborhood we were in, but in adjacent neighborhoods. I didn't quite think twice about it, but then they got louder, and there were more. I saw Catherine was running, so I started to run after her. Catherine dove under an SUV just a few feet away from where we were, and I turned around. If you know the biblical story of Lot's wife, where God says, don't turn around or you'll turn to a pillar of salt, that's exactly how I felt. I turned around and I saw that Yaron had been shot. And I not only shot, but shot 10 times. Bleeding out. As you said, I've never seen any amount of blood like that. And I had convinced myself that Sarah was somewhere else, that she had run. And I crawl under the car with Catherine, and I start screaming at her, Yaron's been shot, Yaron's been shot. And as I'm screaming, I can hear them. I can hear not only the shots that are being shot at Sarah, but them screaming in agony and for help. I can hear it now even. I can hear Yaron screaming for help. And that night was pouring, so I was trying to get my phone to work, because if you have a smartphone, you know the screen, when it's wet, nothing works. I'm tapping, and finally I subconsciously remembered that if on an iPhone, if you push the off button 3 times, it'll automatically call emergency services. So I pushed, and I'm yelling to Catherine to call our embassy security, who is next to me, and we're laying belly down on asphalt with our legs sticking out from under the car, praying that he doesn't see us. The police answer, according to my phone logs, it's 9:06, so that is the time for me forever. And I pretty much screamed down the phone to them, "We've been shot, embassy staffers. This is our location, Capitol Jewish Museum, Washington, D.C. Please come." Embassy staffers, like, and they kept saying, "What? Where? What do you mean?" I understand based on the call log that they were there within 5 minutes. The dispatcher was speaking to me, and she said, "You'll be okay, dispatcher's on the way." And she's asking me to describe the event that we were at and who we were. And then she says, "Do you see the lights?" And I kind of peer out from under the car, and I said, "Yes." And she said, "Then it's safe to come out." So I crawled out from under the car, and I said to Catherine, "Come out." And she said, "Absolutely not." So she stayed, and I looked around, and I finally saw an officer. Just before I saw the officer, I saw Yaron again, this time for sure dead in my mind. At that point, I had called my parents, screaming, and I live 10 miles from where we were, so my parents were very close, and they said, "We're coming." And I said, "Coming where? I'm in a crime scene. Where are you coming? There's no coming." And I hung up on them. Catherine was then sort of dragged out from under the car by the police as they closed off the scene, and we were separated from that moment on. It's about 9:20 at this point. I hadn't seen her again that night. I stood in the rain for about 20 minutes watching Yaron's dead body while they tried to find somewhere safe to keep me. While I was watching, I saw the police escort Elias Rodriguez, our shooter, out of the Capitol Jewish Museum. He went back in after he had stashed the gun, just a step away from where we were hiding, and screamed, I did it for Gaza." And he whipped out a kafia and was so proud of himself. And what the people in the room didn't know was what exactly happened, and before he even mentioned that, they thought he was an innocent bystander. Once the police brought him out, he sort of stood there with this pride in himself of, "Yeah, I did it, and I have no shame." And then they start to question him about where the gun is. And he kind of just cocks his head in my direction because I was standing right where I had gotten up from. And they come over, and I can see them sort of look around for it. And at that point, I had turned my body around because I could no longer watch. And I stayed on that scene for many, many hours in a police car actually facing Yaron's body. It felt like I was his shomer, like I just needed to stay there and watch him until finally they released me.
We can speak with you for hours, but we have a march pretty soon. But I want to recognize the fact that you are wearing a Chai necklace, you are wearing a kippah, and you are wearing a Magen David. And I would like to ask you briefly, do you feel safe at your home communities?
Personally, I don't, and I'm honest. But I don't want to show that I'm scared, because these people, they thrive on us being scared. If you show them that we have the power and we are strong and we are here to stay, and that's what I say to everybody. We are here to stay. We're not going anywhere. All the ones that try to persecute us, they're not here anymore. We are here.
Do I feel safe? In the United Kingdom, we have a huge problem with rising anti-Semitism, like everywhere else in the world. Anti-Semitic incidents have doubled in the last 2 years. We're in 2026, and we have areas where Jews are scared to go. You know, there's been hate marches to London every week since October 7th. We had an incident in Birmingham where Jews couldn't go to a football match. I'm proud of being Jewish, and I'm proud to wear my kippah, and I will wear it wherever I go. But we have a big problem in the United Kingdom, and I'm very worried about what the future holds.
No. It is absolutely unacceptable that I don't feel safe in my communities. That night I questioned where the police were because I knew that event was supposed to be secured. That's why our embassy allowed for us to go. And I still question, and I see them in our neighborhoods, but at the end of the day, I still am looking over my shoulder that, is someone gonna shoot me again? On the other hand, I still wear my Magen David, and I'm decked out in it, because just because you tried to kill me doesn't mean I'm not gonna be more Jewish. In fact, try again.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today. We thought it will be very important for the police delegation to hear your testimonies, to know that Jews are not safe. It's not that they don't feel safe, they are not safe. And from here, this is the message we wanted to open the March of the Living with. Thank you so much for your bravery, for your resilience. We applaud you. Thank you. Since we started this event 45 minutes late, I'm going to make some changes and we'll invite our precious, dearest Holocaust survivor, Nate Leipziger, which is a 98 years old Holocaust survivor, and this is his 22nd march. And we ask him to deliver remarks for you today as we are about to kick off the March of the Living. Nate, please, and thank you so much.
Honored guests, survivors, fellow survivors, not only of the Shoah, but of the recent massacres and shootings, and the words of Hanna and Yoni and Abbie were powerful. And they were a challenge. They were a challenge to all of us to be vigilant. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nate Leipziger. I'm 98 years old. I'm a survivor of the Holocaust and a prisoner of Auschwitz-Birkenau. I grew up in a world of antisemitism. Antisemitism, as you know, has existed for centuries. The form of antisemitism may change. Its language may evolve. Consequences are always the same, tragic. For many decades following the Holocaust, it became less visible, less acceptable, less fashionable, but it never disappeared. It went into hiding. Now it has emerged with alarming force, fueled by extremist ideologies and terrorist organizations. As a survivor of the Holocaust, I tell you, one of our greatest enemies was propaganda and deception. Lies, repeated often, are accepted as truth. Nazis used deceptive language to conceal murder. They used resettlement. Today, We have, again, a problem of language. We talk about anti-Israel or anti-Zionism. It really means against us all. At that time, when I was a prisoner of Auschwitz and Birkenau, we stood alone. No country came to our rescue. 6 million people, my people, as a result, were murdered. Now we are witnessing a similar pattern. Denial of Israel's right is a denial of all of our human rights. As we have seen on October the 7th, violence is the result of propaganda of hatred. Propaganda is powerful. It spreads quickly. Too often it's repeated in by the most respectable media outlets. They're our problems. They are spreading the information without verification. Some media outlets will repeat a term like Hamas said Israel is genocidal, and the public will only hear Israel is homicidal. They forget to say that the source was Hamas, a terrorist organization, lying through their teeth. The media repeats Israel is committing homicide, Israel is committing genocide, and the public buys it and it acts on it. We have recently, in my own community, seen that mezuzahs were torn off the doors of my condo. I felt like my skin was invaded by a virus. I was afraid who may be standing on the other side of my door. Somebody who again wishes to harm me. I don't like those feelings. My synagogue was vandalized. These events bring back feelings that we hoped will never again have to be experienced. They bring fear, vulnerability, and uncertainty. Today, unlike the past, we're not alone. We have the State of Israel. We have allies, countries, the United States, organizations, individuals who stand with us and speak out against hatred. During the Holocaust, there were individuals who risked their everything. They risked their lives to save some Jews. Ordinary people who hid individuals, families, and who stood against the evil at great personal danger. Today, we call them righteous among the nations. Those who stood up against anti-Semitism today and who continue to do so, who defend the truth and human dignity, in my view, are the new righteous among the nations. As survivors, we have a responsibility. That's why I've participated on March of the Living, this time, the 22nd time, to remind the world that we have to remember. In a free, democratic society, must confront hatred misinformation wherever it appears. Governments, institutions, individuals must remain silent, must not remain silent. The time for silence is over. The time for running is over. We must declare firmly and without hesitation, we must declare that we are committed for the security of Israel as a free and democratic state. We must affirm that the Jewish people have a right to live in safety freely in any country they choose, including Israel. We must affirm that Jews, like all people, deserve equal rights. Human rights are also Jewish rights. Our loyalty should not be questioned, no matter where we live, even if we support the State of Israel and identify as Jews or Zionists. Here in Auschwitz, I stand on the ground where silence, lies, hatred led to murder of 6 million, of 1 million people in this country itself. But history must not only be remembered, but history is a warning. History does not repeat itself by accident. It repeats itself when lies are tolerated, hatred is excused, and when good people remain silent. We know where all that leads. I've seen it. So we must stand clearly, firmly, without fear and against hatred. We must stand for truth. We must stand for each other, because if we do not, we have learned nothing. And if we stand together, we'll ensure that this place remains a place of warning, not a prophecy. Thank you. Israel High.
Nate will light one of the 6 memorial torches we're going to lit today. I must apologize because we started 45 minutes late. Very soon we won't be able to move to the beginning of the march, so we have to cut this program short, and I would like to apologize to Rabbi Ambassador Yehuda Kamplun and to you, Mr. Kuppenkler, and to thank all of you for coming here. And we urge you to take Nate's words into your heart when you're marching later today. Thank you so much.